A kid picks up a stone and skips it across a lake. No big deal, right? Most of us have done it. You grab a flat rock, flick your wrist, watch it bounce a few times, and move on with your day. But if you look a little closer, that tiny moment becomes strange. Stranger than it has any right to be. Because somewhere out there, a lion might be stalking prey. One of the most formidable predators on the planet. Built for the hunt. Built for the chase. Built for the kill. And yet there's something the lion can't do. To hurt its target, it has to get close. Close enough to be kicked. Close enough to be gored. Close enough to get hurt itself. The child doesn't. The child can reach out and affect something several meters away. Just like that. Wait, why? Why can a human child influence a distant target more effectively than an animal designed by evolution to hunt for a living? People usually point to intelligence, or language, or tools. Fair enough. But those answers leave something out. Something so familiar we barely notice it. A peculiar ability hiding in plain sight. An ability that reshaped hunting, survival, warfare, and eventually civilization itself. The strange power that built humanity began with distance. Imagine two hunters facing exactly the same challenge. One has to physically reach the target. The other can strike before contact ever happens. Which one would you bet on? At first, the advantage sounds modest. Almost trivial. It isn't. Out in nature, every hunt comes with a cost. Get too close to a zebra, and you might leave with a shattered jaw. Get too close to an antelope, and one well-placed kick could end your story right there. Get too close to anything dangerous, and suddenly the hunt turns into a fight. And fights are expensive. Not just in energy. Not just in time. In survival. Researchers estimate that injuries were among the greatest risks predators faced throughout evolutionary history. A single mistake could mean infection, starvation, death. So imagine a species that stumbled onto a different solution. Not sharper claws. Not larger teeth. Distance. Distance from danger. Distance from uncertainty. Distance from consequences. The farther away you can influence the world, the less you have to gamble with your own body. And that's where the mystery begins. Because if distance is such a powerful advantage, why didn't evolution hand it out more often? Why, out of millions of species, did only one become a predator capable of harming a target before arriving at it? To answer that question, we need to step into a world that looked familiar and alien at the same time. Imagine East Africa roughly 2 million years ago. Wide grasslands stretching toward the horizon. Open terrain. Open visibility. Open danger. Fossil records suggest that early Homo erectus spent increasing amounts of time in environments where seeing and being seen mattered enormously. Predators could spot you from a distance. Prey could spot you from a distance. And you could spot them. At first, that sounds like an advantage. It wasn't always. Because visibility cuts both ways. A lion had claws. A leopard had explosive speed. A hyena had jaws powerful enough to crush bone. What did Homo erectus have? No impressive fangs. No protective armor. No natural weapons worth bragging about. Just endurance, curiosity, coordination, and a body that, at first glance, seemed oddly under-equipped for the world it lived in. Honestly, it looks like a bad deal. If you were designing a predator from scratch, would you choose this? Probably not. But evolution wasn't trying to build the strongest predator. It was experimenting with a different idea. Not the animal that wins every fight. The animal that avoids needing one. Not the creature that reaches the target first. The creature that can affect the target first. That's a completely different game. Because once survival depends less on direct contact and more on influence at a distance, claws start losing value. And other things start gaining value. Timing, prediction, cooperation. For the first time, brains had a chance to outperform claws. Most people think of the human body as average. Not the strongest animal. Not the fastest. Not the toughest. And honestly, that's true. If humans entered a competition based purely on strength, speed, or durability, we'd lose more often than we'd win. But evolution doesn't reward perfection. It rewards usefulness. And when researchers began studying the mechanics of throwing, they noticed something odd. The human body contains several features that seem unrelated until you combine them. Your shoulder can rotate through an unusually wide range of motion. Your waist can twist separately from your hips. Elastic tissues throughout the body store energy and release it fractions of a second later. Individually, none of these seem extraordinary. Together? Different story. Together, they form something surprisingly close to a biological catapult. When you throw, the force doesn't come from one muscle. It travels from your feet, through your legs, into your hips, across your torso, through your shoulder, down your arm, and finally into your hand. One movement feeding the next, one link feeding another, a chain reaction. And when that energy is released, it can happen astonishingly fast. Now compare that to a chimpanzee. A chimp is significantly stronger than a human pound for pound. It can pull harder, climb better, and generate impressive force. So shouldn't it throw farther and more accurately? You'd think so. But raw strength and controlled projection are solving two different problems. Chimpanzees evolved for climbing. Their shoulders prioritize stability and power in a vertical world. Human shoulders followed a different path. Not maximum force. Maximum control. Not brute strength. Directed strength. Wait, that's a strange trait. Why give up power for precision? Because precision creates distance. And distance creates safety. The strongest arm wins the moment. The most accurate arm changes the hunt. Over countless generations, the human body became something unusual. Not a weapon built for close combat. A weapon built to stay away from it. Now let's compare humans to wolves. Because wolves are extraordinary hunters. They communicate. They coordinate. They endure. And above all, they chase. A wolf pack succeeds by closing distance. The strategy is simple. Keep pressure on the target until escape becomes impossible. Shorten the gap. Wear the prey down. Finish the hunt. Humans stumbled onto something different. Instead of reducing distance, what if distance itself could become the advantage? Researchers estimate that early humans were likely using stones and sharpened wooden spears long before advanced weapon technology emerged. And that changed everything. A running animal no longer needed to be touched immediately. A dangerous animal no longer needed to be approached immediately. A confrontation no longer had to become a wrestling match between flesh and muscle. Imagine the difference. A wolf reaches the target with its body. A human reaches the target with an object. Same goal. Different path. One body. Two trajectories. Two completely different ways of surviving. And once groups started combining this ability with cooperation, the advantage exploded. One person distracts. One person waits. One person throws. Three individuals. One plan. Suddenly hunting starts looking less like combat and more like problem solving. Not speed versus speed. Mind versus movement. Prediction versus reaction. The smartest predator isn't necessarily the fastest predator. It's the one that changes the rules of the game. Every extra meter created a little more safety. Every successful throw opened a new possibility. Every generation learned something the previous one didn't know. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a different kind of hunter emerged. A hunter that didn't need to win the race. Only the calculation. But the biggest transformation wasn't happening in the shoulder, or the arm, or the hand. It was happening inside the skull. Think about what throwing actually requires. You don't throw it where the target is. You throw it where it's going. That's a profound difference. A moving animal never stays in one place for long. By the time a stone or spear arrives, the target has already moved. So before your arm does anything, your brain has to run a prediction, a tiny simulation, a mental forecast, a guess about a future that doesn't exist yet. Get it wrong, and the throw misses. Get it right, and the throw connects. Sounds simple. It isn't. Because the future is invisible. And yet your brain is constantly trying to interact with it. Researchers studying motor control suggest that successful movement depends heavily on the brain's ability to generate predictive models of the world. In other words, throwing may be one of the clearest examples of future thinking in action. You see movement. You imagine an outcome. You act before the outcome arrives. That's not just throwing. That's planning. That's strategy. That's cooperation. The same machinery that helps a hunter predict a running animal can help a group prepare for next month's migration, or anticipate next season's conditions, or coordinate tomorrow's hunt. Wait, what if the most important invention in human history wasn't a tool at all? What if it was the ability to mentally travel into the future? Think about that for a second. If you're still with me, subscribe, because what comes next changes how you'll see your own mind. Every successful throw is a prediction about the future. And every prediction is a small step toward becoming human. At this point, someone might raise a fair objection. Hold on. Are humans actually the only animals that throw things? Not exactly. Nature is rarely that simple. Researchers have observed several species tossing objects under specific circumstances. Some primates throw branches, stones, or debris during displays of aggression. Certain birds use tools in ways that seem surprisingly inventive. Across the animal kingdom, there are flashes of creativity that can look uncannily familiar. So if the behavior exists elsewhere, why does this story keep leading back to us? Because there's a huge difference between doing something occasionally and building your entire way of life around it. A chimpanzee may throw when it's angry. A human turned throwing into a survival strategy. Different scale, different stakes. Not a rare behavior. A defining adaptation. Not something you do when threatened. Something you depend on to eat. For hundreds of thousands of years, generation after generation kept refining the same idea. Create distance. Maintain control. Reduce risk. That's the dividing line. The ability appears elsewhere. The strategy does not. And that brings us to the deeper answer. People often say humans conquered the world because we became intelligent. It's a tempting explanation. Maybe even the obvious one. But what if we've been looking at the story from the wrong direction? What if intelligence wasn't simply the cause? What if, at least in part, it was the consequence? Think about everything distance hunting demands. Not strength alone. Not accuracy alone. A combination of abilities working together. To throw successfully, you need memory. You need prediction. You need coordination. You need learning. Miss a target today and remember why. Adjust tomorrow. Improve next season. Over and over again. Every throw becomes feedback. Every hunt becomes information. Every generation inherits knowledge gathered by the last. Imagine an ancestor preparing a spear. The spear matters, of course. But by the time it leaves the hand, most of the work has already happened. Observation came first. Experience came first. Learning came first. The weapon may spend a second in the air. The preparation behind it may span years. The spear traveled through space. The knowledge traveled through time. Wait, notice what's happening here. The challenge was never just hitting a target. The challenge was building a brain capable of imagining outcomes before they arrived. Distance hunting rewarded exactly that. The individuals who predicted better survived more often. The groups that coordinated better ate more often. The communities that shared knowledge adapted faster. Not intelligence creating distance hunting. Distance hunting helping create intelligence. And once that feedback loop started turning, it never truly stopped. And that's where this story becomes personal. Because this isn't just a story about ancient hunters crossing African grasslands. It's a story about what's happening inside your head right now. The same mental machinery that once helped an ancestor predict the path of a spear is still running in the background of your everyday life. When you plan next week, you're using it. When you save money for something months away, you're using it. When you replay a conversation that hasn't happened yet, you're using it. The target changed. The system didn't. Imagine explaining modern life to one of your distant ancestors. You're not tracking antelope. You're planning a career. You're not coordinating a hunt. You're coordinating a business. You're not predicting the movement of prey. You're predicting the reactions of other people. Different goals. Same brain. What's remarkable is how effortlessly your mind slips into futures that don't exist yet. You imagine possibilities. You compare outcomes. You choose a path. Most of the time, you barely notice you're doing it. Because what once provided a survival advantage became something ordinary. Something automatic. The human superpower isn't seeing the future. It's rehearsing it. Not claws. Not fangs. Possibilities. The distance hunter never disappeared. It simply changed shape. It became you. Now go back to where we started. A child. A stone. A few skips across the surface of a lake. It looks like a game. Just a game. And yet hidden inside that small act is a story stretching back nearly 2 million years. Fossil records suggest that generation after generation faced the same challenge. How do you influence something before you can touch it? How do you change an outcome before you arrive? How do you make the future bend in your favor? Somehow, one species found an answer. Not through size. Not through speed. Through distance. Across Earth's history, countless predators mastered strength. Countless predators mastered pursuit. Countless predators mastered ambush. Only one species turned prediction itself into a survival strategy. Only one species learned to shape events before direct contact. Only one species built cities, nations, technologies, and civilizations on top of that ability. Wait, maybe that's the real lesson. Humanity's greatest weapon was never the stone. The stone was just the evidence. The real weapon was the imagination required to throw it. The moment our ancestors learned to affect the world from a distance, they began doing more than hunting. They began shaping history. They began shaping civilization. They began shaping tomorrow. We conquered distance before we conquered the world. First the stone, then the future. If you enjoyed this journey into what makes our species unique, subscribe.